John, and I'll be presenting a confession by Leo Tolstoy. This is one of his shorter books. It's actually just a really long essay. So the very first paragraph of the essay, he starts with, I was baptized and educated in the Orthodox Christian faith. Even as a child and throughout my adolescence and youth, I was schooled in the Orthodox beliefs. But when at the age of 18 I left my second year of studies at the university, I had lost all belief in what I had been taught. So he's opening his essay basically saying, even though he was raised to be Christian, as he grew up in life and as he experienced life and as he matured, he started to lose belief in Christianity and religion. And then he begins to also mention that they were taught catechism, instruction in religion, especially Christianity in school, and sent people to church. Teachings of faith accepted on trust and sustained by external pressure gradually fade under the influence of knowledge and experience of life, which stand in opposition to those teachings. So he's just saying that as he experiences life, everything he experiences in life, everything he does, is actually contradictory to what the church has been teaching him. So he's starting to wonder and think about, the meaning of life and Christianity versus reality. So here, this is just kind of a common thing that people do, is that people pray in church. So everyone in church does it, and it's habitual in church. And we're taught that it's a way to communicate with God. But Tolstoy, he couldn't maintain this habit and lifestyle. So he started to have a moral dilemma about Christianity and just the habits of what Christians do. His loss in faith also was reinforced when his friend told him a story about this long paragraph is basically saying that a friend of his and his little brother, they went on a hunting trip, and his little brother would, before he would sleep, he would pray to God. So he would, kneel at his bed and say his prayer and then go to sleep. But his older brother said, "You still do that?" And then since the younger brother was kind of self-conscious about it, he just stopped doing it and stopped going to church. So when he heard that his friend's little brother stopped doing that, he just kind of used that to reinforce his loss in Christianity and loss in faith. And here's just an illustration of everyone in church praying, but there's one person who's not praying. And that person's thinking, do I have to pray? Well, in his essay, he continues to say that basically as he was a child and raised, he was supposed to pray, believe in God, and believe in the religion. But as he began reading and began to think more by himself and question authority, as most children and teenagers do, he began to renunciate the teachings of faith in early life. So now we have to make the question, well, why did he lose faith? So he mentions that his break in faith occurred just by living life. So the teachings of faith have no place in life and never come into play in relations among people. They simply play no role in living life itself. So he's saying that as you go to school, as you just do your normal things, when you go to school and you go out with your friends and you stay home, you notice that you only became religious during church, how often that was. And he also says that a desire to be better, not in my own eyes or in the eyes of God, but rather desire to be better in the eyes of other people. I wanted to be wealthier than others. So he started to get influenced by humanity. And he started to notice himself that he wanted to be famous and rich, not for God, not to help God, to spread the word of God, but just to make himself feel better. And he wanted to compare himself with other humans and say, I'm better than those people. So Tolstoy was just living life, and he began to question faith, and he just noticed that it wasn't used in daily life. So then he began to ask himself, what is the meaning of life? So he's a famous poet, famous writer, so he became a teacher. So he said, our mission is to educate people. In order to avoid the obvious question, what do I know and what can I teach? So the theory explained that it's not necessary to know anything, and that the artist and the poet teach unconsciously. So since he's educated, well-respected, he should be able to teach easily. And that's what he did. He received money, and then the people around him praised him. Thus, everyone of us believed himself to be right. So this is where he starts getting to questioning everything. So he noticed that he's with other teachers at the college or university he's teaching at. So he compared it to living in a mental hospital. So he called them people living in a madhouse. At the time, I only vaguely suspected this, and like all madmen, I thought everyone except myself was mad. So he thought everyone else is crazy, only he's reasonable, only he's smart and educated, and what he knows is correct. So Tolstoy thought this was the purpose of life for many years when he was teaching with other poets and writers. So he just thought everyone else is crazy, they don't know what they're doing, but I'm correct, I'm right. And then he began to really think about it, where he said he has a pathological pride and the insane conviction that it was his mission to teach people without knowing what he was teaching them. So even though he didn't really know what he was teaching and what he believed in what he was teaching, he still did it because that's what he was paid to do. That's why he became famous and he got a lot of money, people respected him for his teaching. So he also had an experience in his life where his brother died at an early age, and it was slow and painful. So this also made him question, why is there a God, why is there religion? Because if there was God or religion, then his older brother shouldn't have died, or if he died, it should have been quickly and painlessly. It was the exact opposite, slow and painful death. So at this point, he was even kind of suicidal. He didn't understand life, he didn't know what the point of living was, so he began to be having suicidal thoughts. And then he continues to think that he didn't want to discover truth anymore because I had guessed what it was, that life is meaningless. But this is a long essay where he repeatedly says life is evil and meaningless and there's no point in being alive. So he keeps reinforcing that when he says, had I simply understood that life has no meaning, I might have been able to calmly accept it. So he's just thinking, there's no point in living, I don't know why I'm alive anymore. So even though he's rich and famous and people respect him, he doesn't really consider that to be alive. And then the last paragraph says, I must know the meaning of my life. I have to say that it is a particle of infinity that only fails to give it any meaning but destroys all possible meaning. So he's just comparing religion as we don't know the limits of knowledge of religion, but we know that what we think we know are the boundaries of life. So he compares particle of infinity with religion and faith. So he starts to have an understanding what life is, and he found that people escape life in 4 ways. The first way is ignorance, just not knowing that life is evil and meaningless. The second escape is Epicureanism, which is kind of enjoying the pleasures of human life, enjoying what you have now. The third meaning of life is through strength and energy, you basically destroy life. So it's like kind of ending life itself. And the fourth way of escape is continuing to drag out a life as evil and meaningless, and just kind of accepting it and knowing that nothing can come of it. So that's what he thought people did to escape the meaning of life. So his question, he continues to question, then why keep living if life is evil and meaningless? So then he starts to realize as he gets older and starts to think about it, because he writes a lot about this, which is the same theme of just what's the meaning of life. So something is wrong here, I must have made a mistake somewhere. So now he's starting to educate himself and starting to have a paradigm shift. So as he searched for the meaning of life, it never once occurred for him to ask, what sort of meaning do the millions of people in the world who have lived and who are now ascribed to their lives? So he's starting to see, what do other people see that I'm missing? So he's starting to question, am I asking the right question? So the fact that he thinks this way, it shows that he's very intelligent, because everyone knows he's a well-respected writer, and this thought process is the fact that he's asking, am I missing something, shows that he's intelligent. So this is an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this graph just shows on the x-axis, the competence. So if you're a little bit incompetent, you're very confident because you don't know what you don't know. Then the more you learn, the more you realize I don't know that much. And if you move far right to the graph, then you gain your confidence back because you're confident that you know stuff. So this is just slides explaining that less confident people are more confident. So this isn't just in religion or in Tolstoy's era, it's in everyday life. So organizations usually hire the most confident person during an interview, but it turns out that the person is also the least capable one. So someone's very cocky, very arrogant, that usually means they don't know much. And then usually when you see someone and you think, oh, this guy's so smart, or this girl is so smart, and they're always saying, oh, I'm not that smart, I don't know that much, It's not that they're being humble, it's just that they know that they don't know everything about that subject. So the pressing question is, why are people who are not smart or not that knowledgeable think that they're so knowledgeable? And that's because they don't realize what they don't know. So poor performers believe they know everything in a particular subject, and therefore they tend to be overconfident in it. This is just explaining what I said before. Is the more you know, you start to realize I'm actually not that smart. So the person who thinks is smart may sound humble by saying I don't know that much, but they're actually realizing there's a lot more to that subject than you think. So poor performers don't know that because they don't really know that much. And if you tell them that, they don't believe you because they believe they know everything. And here, so the fact that he's seeking the answer for life, and he's smart, he's smart enough to know that there's a bigger purpose in life, not just about being rich and respected and teaching. And the fact that he made that question, why are other people so happy, he's starting to have that friendship. So this is one of his famous quotes where he says, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. So he was wondering, what's the meaning of life? Why am I not happy? Life is evil and meaningless. But instead of blaming the world for being evil and meaningless, he's starting to realize I have to change myself to be accepted. And it's not just him, it also happens in nature. So I believe Dongjun answered this question. This is an ionic bond. So the chlorine has 7 valence electrons and sodium only has 1. And to fill that valence electron of 8, it's easier for sodium to get rid of that 1 electron to make the ionic bond. So this happens in nature in everyday life. So what doesn't happen is that one person usually doesn't change and say, I should change to match society. So that's why this never happens in real life. Chlorine never donates 7 valence electrons to sodium, it's the opposite way around. So here, this shows that Tolstoy is seeing that life. He's starting to change his question, not saying what's the meaning of life, but what can I do to make my life happy? So he changes his view, he changes his question on the meaning of life. And you can see this, you can still see that he's still arrogant because he calls other people simple people. So he looked around at the masses of simple people and saw that all these millions of people who have lived and still live do not fall into my category. So he's saying that they can't compare to what he is. So his knowledge, his respectability, his place in society. So he still calls them simple, but he is realizing that he needs to change his thinking, even though he's smart. So according to faith, it followed that in order to understand the meaning of life, I would have to turn away from reason, the very thing from which meaning was necessary. So here he's saying, he's a very logical person, and life is what he knows. And then to believe in religion means you have to believe in faith, which there's no boundaries, it's infinite. So he's having trouble accepting that, but he's starting to realize he should start to accept that. So here's kind of, this life is saying that other people were simple because his opinion of himself is so high, but he still is smart enough to realize something has to change. And not people have to change, but he has to change. So that kind of says it in the second and third paragraph where he's saying other people are simple. And here, like I said, he's smart enough to realize he's still kind of smart and arrogant, but he still knows he needs to change. So has he found his answer to life? So as he looked around at people, he saw they were living, that they were happy. But he wanted to be happy too. So faith gives an infinite meaning to the finite existence of man, a meaning that is not destroyed by suffering, deprivation, or death. So he started to know that he has to study the simple people to realize what's the meaning of life and what makes people so happy. So Tolstoy, he answered that question with life is evil and meaningless with, he has to change his perception of himself and of life. So he started to believe that he has to start to believe in religion, the infinite boundaries in knowledge. And he says, for he who does evil hates the light and will not venture into the light, lest his deeds be revealed. So it is more important and more pressing for me to feel that I was a good man than to admit that life was evil. So that was his arrogance. He felt that he had to believe himself to be important, to have people admire him and give him money. He thought that was the meaning of life. But even when he did that, he wasn't happy enough. So he started to think there has to be a bigger meaning in life. And then he started to find his love for God. So Tolstoy followed the ways of laborers and their faith in Christianity. He still had more questions because he's that intelligent person. He's always asking questions. He always wants to learn more and know more. So for him to know God and to live, to come to him the same God is life. So he started to equate the meaning of life is knowing God and studying God and loving God. So first he had to accept God, which he started to do, but he still wanted to learn more. So he started to learn about religious, the Bible's, different versions of the Bible. So he thought that man's task in life is to save his soul. In order to save our souls, we must live according to the ways of God. And in order to live according to the ways of God, we have to renounce the sensual pleasures of life, labor, suffer, and be kind and humble. So he's just saying we have to work hard. We have to suffer a little bit and be kind and humble. We're not supposed to be arrogant because pride is one of the sins. He's just learning that and realizing his arrogance and his high respectability, his highly respected position in society isn't the meaning of life, and he has to learn how to be more humble. So what do we do for God? So some people say, this instance in my life is just a test for God. So Tolstoy could even say that life itself is a test for God. The whole lifespan is just testing to see how we live, how we do on this test. And as he learned more, he began, to have more questions. So here, he's just summarizing that if you sacrifice physical comfort to humble the pride of my intellect, to be closer to my ancestors and contemporaries, to seek the meaning of life, it was the same as with the preparation for communion. So he's starting to read prayers every day, do gestures that show that God, that he loves them. And everything he's doing in life is to praise God. And here, so there's different types of Christianity. So as he was learning more and doing more for religion, he started to realize every church had their own way of thinking, of interpreting the Bible. So he was raised in the Orthodox Church, and then there's the Catholic Church has their own interpretation of the Bible. So basically this paragraph is saying that every religion thought they were right and the other religion was wrong, but they wouldn't say it in that way. They would just say, we would pray for the other church or the other believers. They wouldn't say, if they're going, to hell or to heaven, but they would just say that our church is the correct interpretation and we can just pray for the others who won't be saved. And as he's a smart guy, so he kept asking questions and learning. So he's saying that if he finds the true meaning of life, he's going to write a book about it. But as you can see in the last sentence, he never wrote The Investigation of Dogmatic Theology. It was never published, so he himself never found the whole meaning of life or the true meaning of life. So in the summary, he had the whole journey of he lived a life, he was rich, famous, like everyone wants to be, but he still wasn't happy. So he started to question, well, why am I not happy if I'm rich and famous and everyone respects me? And then he started to find religion. And even as he found religion, he still wasn't quite satisfied with himself. He wanted to learn more about religion. So he had a dream, it's just it's like a metaphor of what his journey. So he was hanging by strings and going, kind of floating in the air. So it's kind of like being in heaven and being suspended kind of by his faith. And as you can see, he was relentlessly pursuing the act of self-inquiry right through to his conclusion. So he's just saying this journey taught him a lot, and he's been through a lot, and this dream is kind of the metaphoric expression of it. So these questions You know, you actually think about these questions too. Like, so a lot of people say, well, when I graduate college, I want to be rich, or I want to make money, or I want to have a lot of this or that. That's, according to this PowerPoint, it's just one of the Epicureanisms, one of the beliefs of people thinking what the meaning of life is. So you guys should think about, once you're rich, or once you have your family or house, or whatever you have, is that going to make you happy? So is there a true meaning of life? And do you agree with Tolstoy's essay? Do you think he was a little bit off or a little bit correct? And then what does it mean to you? Like, are you supposed to help others or only help yourself? These are just kind of the questions I want you to think about as you live your everyday life. Thanks.